Hola de nuevo a todos. Ya vamos por la tercera sesión de esta 12ª sesión, que es la que estamos ahora. Avisaros que aunque ahora voy a dar paso a Fabio y lo voy a hacer en castellano, la ponencia va a ser en inglés, pero seguro que la vamos a entender y la vamos a poder seguir todos. Pero tal como le comentaba a Fabio, él me comprende, pero yo no me atrevo a saltar el inglés. Entonces, voy a comenzar presentándote, haciendo una recomendación al público, que es la lectura de un libro que yo todavía no he leído, pero que resulta muy interesante ya solo el título, que es el Gastronativism, Food Identity y Politics. ¿Por qué? Porque, a ver, estoy investigando sobre ti y de repente me he dado cuenta que reflexionas sobre el mundo, hoy vamos a hablar de alimentación, pero reflexiones desde el mundo desde un punto muy diferente y más de uno de nosotros no nos hemos dado cuenta de lo importante que es la alimentación como símbolo del poder, ¿de acuerdo? Es decir, la alimentación sirve a los individuos, a las sociedades para negociar, para tener poder, es lo que hace que hayan perdedores y ganadores. Por tanto, la comida es mucho más central en nuestra sociedad de lo que nosotros nos podemos llegar a imaginar. Entonces, lo siguiente que también es muy importante es que es el mundo de la cultura y del cómo transmitir este conocimiento y el cómo, de repente, tenemos que poder hablar con un léxico, con una manera de expresar diferente a lo que hacemos, pues los arquitectos hablamos como arquitectos, los diseñadores como diseñadores, los médicos como médicos. Tenemos que aterrizar y hacer que la sociedad vea en global la importancia de la alimentación. Y eso, una muy buena herramienta es la museografía. Entonces, la museografía permite explicar cosas y compartirlas de un modo mucho más atractivo que una tesina doctoral, pongamos por caso, ¿de acuerdo? Y al final hablaremos de personas que son usuarios, consumidores, comensales, clientes, ciudadanos, hablaremos de personas, pero teniendo, y recalco eso, que he dicho al principio y que nos explicarás mucho mejor, el cómo la comida acaba siendo no solo símbolo, sino la realidad del poder, tanto desde un punto de vista local, es decir, visto en pequeño y visto en individuos, como desde un punto de vista totalmente global. Entonces, os presento Fabio Parasecoli, es profesor de Food Studies en la Universidad de Nueva York. Interpreto que estás en Nueva York, te saludamos desde el otro lado del charco. Y nada, tienes a todo el público para que nos expliques eso del food, el diseño y los museos.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. Yo voy a hablar en inglés. Si hay preguntas, puedo contestarles en castellano, pero para hacer mi presentación es más cómodo hacerlo en inglés. Voy a compartir algo. Antes, no estoy a Estados Unidos ahora, estoy en Venecia, porque trabajé en una exposición. Aquí veis, sorry, here you see the poster. It's called Gusto, Gli Italiani a Tavola. So it's taking place in the Museum M9, the museum of the 20th century, and I'd like to start sharing at this point. Let's see, there we go. This is the museum. So it's just happened that I was here at the museum to present my new book, Gastronativism, inside the exhibition. I thought this would be a good topic to discuss because museums can become one of the ways in which people can better understand their reality, including food. And it's been quite interesting that in the past few years, there's been more and more specialized museums, but also exhibitions about food in museums all around the world. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but I would just introduce the main line of thought. What's the difference between using design? We're in a design festival, so let's talk design. I'm no designer. I'm a food studies scholar, but I work with designers quite a bit. So I had ways, opportunities to think about this. What's the difference about just making an exhibition about food? And what can be the role of design to have people not only enjoy a nice exhibition, but also to think about food in a different way? Can design thinking and references to design, especially systemic design, help people understand food, and in particular, food systems, the way food is organized, or where our food comes from, who prepares it, who has access, who doesn't, what's healthy, what's not. So in our case, in this museum in Mestre, Venice, we didn't work specifically about design as a tool, but since the exhibition was about gusto, which is taste, which is preference, which is culture, we did include many design elements. On the left in the slide, you can see, for instance, an exhibition of different design objects for the kitchen, but in exhibition you can see stoves and furniture for the kitchen. In a way, design does shape the way we think about food. The majority of specialized museums on food focus on one specific item. And I'll give a few examples. So here we have the Museum of Bread and Art in Ulm, Germany. It's a beautiful museum, but as you can see, it's more the exposition of paintings, of objects, of pieces that can help the visitor understand what's bread, what's been the cultural role of bread. So it's not particularly interactive, and there is not much way for people to better understand, how does bread sit in the food system, what its role, what its relevance. To make it a little more entertaining, very often, museums around food create this sort of diorama, reconstructions of places where food was produced or consumed. In the case of the Bread Museum, we have images of a bakery. Actually, it's a reconstructed bakery with mannequins, so people can get a better sense of what it would be like. But interestingly, there is no way to know what it felt like. What were the smells? What was the temperature? What were the sounds? Which are very important elements when we experience food. We don't just look, we taste, we smell, we hear. So this is one of the challenges in the musealization of food. In the same museum here, you can see there are sections for children where they can touch things, move things around, but it's sort of kids play, and it's not really integrated in all the exhibition. That said, as I said, it's a beautiful museum, and they do a really good job at explaining, the history of bread. Sometimes, and this is the example of Museo de la Chocolata in Barcelona, in Spain, there is also an element of using the food to create items that can entertain the public. In this case, these are objects made of chocolate inspired by movies. You can see the Beauty and the Beast and the old Méliès movies. So in a way, the food is not just the topic of the exhibition, but it becomes the medium through which the exhibition expresses itself. In other exhibitions, you can see the food actually being produced. This is the case of the Köln Chocolate Museum, also in Germany. There you can actually see chocolates being made. which is interesting because you can understand better the industrial process. Of course, in this case, the museum is attached to a chocolate factory. And this makes it quite exciting, also because then you can taste the chocolate as it comes out of the production line. In other museums, there are opportunities to actually play with the food. This is the Museum of the Gingerbread in Torun, in Western Poland. Gingerbread is very traditional there. We have the first traces, I think, in the 14th century. So they have tons of historical pieces in the museum. But what they've done, they've created a lab where kids can actually play with the dough of the gingerbread. They can put the dough in these molds and then have the mold baked. In the back, there is an oven. So in this case, it does become interactive. But it's more like a game, and the activity doesn't help much to understand, okay, why was there gingerbread there? Why was it so popular? Why has it lasted until today? Again, this kind of activity doesn't help us to put the food into the food system. Another example from Poland, I'm doing a lot of work in Poland right now, so I have many examples, is that in the Museum of Vodka in Warsaw, at the end of the tour, you also have a little class in vodka tasting, especially because most visitors, vodka is vodka. They don't really think about different qualities, different smells, different kinds. And so you have sort of a vodka sommelier that connects elements that the visitors have seen in the museum and presented in a very interactive way. You're actually tasting, smelling, drinking vodka. When it's possible, some museums try to expand outside of their walls. This is the case of the King Jan II Castle in Warsaw. They have a special group of people that are organizing food-related events to introduce historical recipes, to have people understand a little bit of history. In this case, the head chef, Maciej Nowicki, has also worked on a garden where he grows the herbs that were used in historical recipes. So when you visit the castle, you can also visit the garden, actually smell the herbs. Some herbs now are not used for cooking any longer, so it's very interesting to see them grown, touch them, get a sense of what they are like. Sometimes, in museums there can be dinners. This is the case of the Museum of Food and Drink when it was in Brooklyn. They invited me to present a little bit Polish food. There was an exhibition about Polish food. On the right, you can see people could smell and touch ingredients that maybe in the US they would not be familiar with. They could eat. They could watch the chef cook what they eat. And then, in between courses, a scholar, an expert would talk and sort of put all the elements together to help them understand. I'm sorry, I realize I move my hands a lot. I'm actually Italian, so it comes with the territory. Now, so these are very, very interesting examples of fun, very well done. But what does it take to use design not only to create a nice environment, a nice museum design, a nice experience, but actually to make design part of the object of the museum, part of what the focus is. And so this was the idea behind this exhibition that took place in 2019 at the Victoria and Albert Museum called Food Bigger Than the Plate. And I was a consultant in the sort of ideation of the exhibition. The idea was, does design play a role not only in the food system as it is now, but can design maybe introduce new ideas, introduce new behavior, let people experience their food in different ways? So the topic was not only food and the food system, but also the role of design, or the possible role of design and food design to change the food system. That was a challenge, and I think it was the first time that was done. I worked with the curators of the exhibition. On the right, you can see the first ideas we had in some brainstorming. And then on the left, that's the final organization of the exhibition. At this point, not only the objects and the interactive experiences are important, but also the narrative becomes central. How do you organize these objects, these experiences in the space of the museum so that people can reflect on a food system, on design? And so in the exhibition, you would enter from the composting part, then you would move to farming, trading, and eating. And so we wanted to show how these different phases of food are actually part of the same system. And for each section, we try to show design objects or design projects or art projects that were either critiquing the food system as it is, or making suggestions on how the food system could be in the future. So these are a few images of the exhibition. One of the problems is that it's difficult to have actual food in the museum because there are objects, because museums don't deal with that too well. But as you can see in the top right image, you can see at the bottom, we managed to have mushrooms grow in the museum. And underneath, bottom right, there was sort of a counter where you could sort of explain what are your priorities when it comes to food. I don't know, the environment, health, fun, taste. And based on that, there was an algorithm that would prepare something specially for you. That was a big hit, but it also connected the fact, okay, what I eat is actually a reflection of my politics. Before, we were talking about food and power. This was a way to help the visitors reflect about that. We also wanted to have people think about their own traditions, their own identities. So for instance, they asked me to record myself while cooking with my family. And you can see there the family recipes. So we also wanted to give sort of a historical background. Now, I've been invited to be actually a co-curator at the Museum of the City of New York to bring that exhibition to New York, but to make it all about the food system of New York City. And that's a big challenge because, as you can imagine, food in New York City is quite complicated. So, but at the same time, we want to use design as a way to have people acquire agency, feel that they can do something, that something can be done. It's not stuck. Things can change. Things can be made better. So we're using more or less some of the ideas in the London exhibition, but we are adapting them to a specific and very complex food system, which is in New York City. If you happen to be in New York, the exhibition will open on September 16th this year, and it will go on for 1 year. So maybe if you happen to be there. Two more short examples, and then I'll cut. I will also be collaborating with the Museum of Bydgoszcz in Poland to figure out how to use these historical barges that they had in the city that transported grain. The city was sort of a node in trade. And so I think that could be a very good way to have visitors understand, the food system, how it was, how it is now, what has been the role of Poland in international trade, what is its role now. So I'll be there in late September, October to work on this project. I'm also working with the Museum of the Fashion Institute of Technology on an exhibition on food and fashion. And also there we want, of course, fashion is design. So the topic is design in itself, but also we want to have people think about, I don't know, how similar is fast food with fast fashion? What's the impact on the environment? What are the sustainability issues in the food system and in the fashion system? What are the labor issues? So the element of design, again, is not just to make a cute or beautiful exhibition, but actually it becomes a topic of reflection. And I would end here. It's almost 5:30. I know we started a little late, but in case there are questions, the questions can be in castellano y yo puedo contestar también en castellano.
Muy bien. Más que preguntar, te he estado yo y entiendo que el público es escuchándote muy atentamente. Yo tengo ganas de hacer unas reflexiones. La primera es, ¿para cuándo una guía Michelin de food museums? Porque las vacaciones se acercan y me han cogido muchas ganas de poder visitar muchos de los ejemplos que nos has enseñado. Pero bueno, anécdota aparte, aunque ahí lo dejo. Creo que sería muy necesario una buena compilación de todo lo que nos has enseñado. Yo me quedaría con varias cosas que creo que son importantes. Una, nos has mostrado el cómo el diseño es la mejor herramienta de comunicación para compartir conocimiento. Porque el diseño nos permite hacer sencillas las cosas que en el fondo son complejas. Es decir, y mucha gente confunde compleja con complicadas, que no es exactamente lo mismo. Por tanto, reivindicar el diseño y por tanto también el food design como una herramienta de comunicación. Esa es una. La otra, lo has comentado en un par de ocasiones, que es que tenemos que entender la alimentación. Hago paréntesis, entre paréntesis podríamos hablar de diseño, podríamos hablar de arquitectura, yo de formación soy arquitecto, podríamos poner muchas cosas. Tenemos que entenderlas como sistema. Es decir, algo que las partes, una vez unidas, consiguen crear algo a nivel superior. Y por tanto, cuando hablamos de sistemas, no solo sería el sistema como alimentación, sino incluso el ecosistema de los individuos, las ciudades, los países, porque también interpreto que los diferentes museos que estamos viendo son de países diferentes y por tanto también transmiten de modo diferente. Y después me he dado cuenta de una cosa que seguramente es por deformación profesional, que es que los otros sectores en los que estamos los arquitectos estamos cogiendo mucha información y aplicando esos conocimientos que nos has enseñado que pasan en museografía. Es decir, cada vez más el hospitality, es decir, hoteles, restaurantes, el retail, que serían las tiendas, el workplace, que serían las oficinas, cada vez más, para que sean visitables y sean un lugar de encuentro, necesitan de una narrativa o el famoso storytelling que llamamos en branding, que en el lugar donde se aplica mejor es en la museografía. ¿De acuerdo? Pero yo creo que también es importante que estas cosas suceden en espacios construidos. Y son espacios que también nos lo has enseñado en los museos. No solo son para leer, para ver, sino también para experimentar, para tocar, para tener sensaciones. Bueno, y por tanto los 5 sentidos tienen importancia. Solo en restauración y alimentación tiene sentido el gusto. Como arquitectura, la única arquitectura que me viene a la cabeza que te la puedes comer sería la casa de Hansel y Gretel. Pero todo llegará. A mí lo que me gustaría, esto ha sido como una reflexión de cosas que he ido aprendiendo escuchándote, es el objetivo de comunicar la alimentación en los museos para conseguir un futuro mejor. ¿Por qué los gobiernos, los ayuntamientos, nosotros como ciudadanos y personas necesitamos tener, que no muchos teníamos, esta cultura tan vinculada a la alimentación? No sé si
Precisamente.
¿eh? Si no la repito.
No, te entendí. Sí, sí, por supuesto. Eso es muy importante y por eso es también una conexión con el problema del poder. ¿Quién decide lo que comemos y cómo comemos? Los museos pueden ayudar a la gente a entender mejor los sistemas detrás, lo que hacen todos los días, que parece natural, pero no es natural para nada. En realidad el resultado de muchas transformaciones económicas, decisiones económicas y todo eso.
Yo creo que está claro, es decir, lo más importante es tener conocimiento, compartirlo aparte transversalmente con gente de disciplinas y conocimientos diversos, pero tiene que llegar a todo el mundo y esa es la mejor herramienta para conseguir eso que te preguntaba, que es un futuro mejor.
Sí.
Ya para terminar, darte las gracias. ¿Ya se ha publicado el libro del que hablaba?
Sí, sí, acaba de salir hace unos días.
Pues ya sabéis lo que tenéis que hacer. Comprarlo y leerlo. Oye, Fabio, muchas gracias. Un placer. Nos vemos en breve.
Muchas gracias. Adiós.
Un saludo virtual.